Hello and welcome to our podcast, Building a Greener Future, where we discuss the importance of green infrastructure and how we can effectively integrate greening systems into projects for long-term sustainability. I'm Kezia and I work in the research and marketing team at ANS Global, and today we'll be discussing why we need to and how we can improve culture, encourage behavioural changes and add value through nature in our urban spaces. Today we've got Steve to chat us through with us. He is our Senior Urban Environment Consultant here at ANS. So, Steve, we talk about this topic a lot as a team, but I know it was your research and drive that first made us look further into it. So, can you explain why this topic first caught your attention?
Well, for many years, we've talked about biophilia to do with interior landscaping. We've talked about colours of carpets, lights, planting interior, and all this is very correct. But what we haven't really realised is that actually biophilic cities, biophilic towns, biophilic streets has a massive effect on our culture and on our spaces, because every one of us have an innate connection with nature. It doesn't matter whether we're indoors or outdoors. We have this connection with nature, and it's so important that we really focus on it and provide for it in our designs. So really, that's what got me going, looking into it first of all, was understanding the importance of nature in our cities, in our towns, as to reflect on behaviours and reflect on personnel. You know, where is our connection with nature? You know, so many children are brought up more than 15 minutes from a connection with nature. So it was how we could provide for that, really.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that is what biophilia is all about, isn't it? It's so much, when you research it, it's all about interior design. But really, it describes our connection with nature, so it should be outdoors as well as indoors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The reason we tend to overlook it is that there's many thousands of people that are brought up in the country, and they take that connection with nature for granted. But what we don't think about is the millions of people that are brought up in cities and towns that haven't got that connection with nature. And that's really what got me to start looking into it and realize that actually it will affect our behaviors in the city. It will affect how children grow up. It will affect how they behave when they're older. It will affect antisocial behavior. It actually reduces a connection with nature, actually reduces antisocial behavior. It'll make people more positive.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was looking into it the other day and found out that there's 7 to 8% less crime in areas with access to nature, and even increases of 4 to 5% in property price. That's quite impressive, I thought.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that, I mean, I installed a living wall in 2013, and it was an area that was known for antisocial behaviour. But by 2015, they were installing restaurants in that facility. So it actually showed how the real estate value increased. But what was making the difference was a big presence of a living wall, which was really creating a connection with nature.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, random fact, but the human eye actually sees more shades of green than any other colour. So we see there are more shades to us of green than, say, shades of red. And it links with how much better we feel around nature, because we can see so much more of the colours, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just really interesting.
It is really interesting. And actually that what we see reflects in how we behave. You see, and if we're living in a concrete jungle and all we see all day long is dusty, dirty walls that are full of pollution and no greenery, nothing softening, then actually that will put us in a very stressed position.
Yeah.
We often use the analogy, you might have a stressful situation. You say, I'm going to go for a walk. You walk into a busy street full of traffic and crowds of people. Actually, your tension level rises.
It doesn't help. No.
But then you go for a walk and sit in the park, or you go and walk by a canal or by a river. You get a connection with nature. You feel you can cope. So it's why we need to create spaces where people want to be, rather than forcing people into an area where they've got no connection.
Yeah, it is an important consideration. But why is green space so important, especially as I speak about them for children?
Well, I think probably what's come to light, it might even more so over the last 12 to 14 months with the pandemic, is that when everybody was locked down, those that didn't have a connection with nature found it much, much more difficult than those that do. So when you take a child growing up, we live in an electronic age, and everything is focused on computers and technology, and actually that affects their behaviors, it affects their cultures, it affects the way they think, and it affects the way they view things. So
absolutely.
Going back to what we were saying at the beginning of this conversation, is that we have an innate tendency to connect with nature. That is in us, as a person, as a human. That's in us, and what they're being deprived from is that innate tendency, is that connection. So if we go into a busy street, I mean, you take Piccadilly, for example, where you've got lots of traffic, lots of built up area, and then you walk into St James's Market and there's a living wall there, and there's a love heart that was put in February last year that was sponsored by Crown Estates. That was actually connecting with nature. So to children walking down that street, all of a sudden, it's not just another street, it's actually a place they want to be.
Yeah, it's like a small oasis, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, exactly. It's like a small oasis. It's a green spot in the midst of a concrete jungle. And the potential to develop this, to create real estate value, to actually give a better space for everybody, a better experience. It's really a better life by providing this green infrastructure.
Yeah, it's so true, because it's not just sights, is it? It's all the senses. It's the acoustic value, because the combination of the soil, which is a really important part, and the plants actually reduces the noise pollution. So it looks lovely. It's all the shades of green and colour, but then it's the fact that it's a lot quieter as well, away from the sort of hustle and bustle, and then you get the sense of the flowers and.
Yeah, and then you get seasonal interest. You see, you've got discovery plants, so you actually design a wall, and design a green infrastructure, whether it's a wall or whether it's a roof, whether it's balcony planting. There's so many opportunities in our cities and towns to give this biophilic space, but you design it based on a seasonal interest. So you've got snowdrops coming up after Christmas, and then you've got daffodils early spring, then you've got bluebells. And then you've got other perennial plants flowering during the season. And then all the time, those plants, as you're saying, are doing other things. They're cleaning the environment, adding to the biodiversity, and they're actually connecting. You've got butterflies. Then that butterfly will have an experience for children again. They can start watching nature.
Yeah.
You can then start looking at urban farming. There's other things we can develop.
Yeah, it is a big topic, actually, that's often overlooked. What is your experience with urban farming? What does it mean?
Urban farming, you see, is another great opportunity for biophilic architecture, biophilic design, and integrating children, integrating adults, really everybody of all generation, because using a natural organic substrate within a living wall and a green roof, we can actually then grow ornamentals like we've been talking about, flowering plants and flowering shrubs, but then we can also introduce certain areas we can leave for actually cropping. So we can actually put salads in there. We can grow tumbling tom tomatoes. We can grow runner beans. We can grow herbs, oregano, chive, parsley, mint, lots of different. And then the children can get involved with doing that. So they can actually watch they can put cress in there, and they can watch the seeds come up, and they can germinate, and then they can see them grow. They can have an interest in them, then they can pick them, then they can sow something else. So to a lot of people going back 50, 60 years ago, they were brought up with areas of allotments, there was school gardens, and this has all gone. We've built in these spaces. We don't have these school gardens anymore. We don't have the scope for it, like we used to. But they can actually use the walls to actually start providing crops and providing interest and helping their behavior. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier, that it will help the way they develop, help the way they grow, and help the way they're formed, as children what we're saying, brought up more than 15 minutes from a green space. Well, that affects how they're formed. So this is what we
It does.
can design.
It's so interesting. There are so many opportunities, and the thing with living walls and green roofs is that they don't take up the precious space in a city. It's like a city like London. They don't want to have so much traditional landscaping. I mean, they can't have it. They can't just plant hundreds and hundreds of trees in a place that needs nature the most, like we're saying Piccadilly or something. But there's so many spaces for a living wall or a green roof. I mean, it's just not taking up that space, is it?
Exactly. Well, as has been proven, because the under the soil or under the ground in all these cities and towns, there's so much pipe work, cables. It's very, very difficult to plant a tree. But so
there's a lot of regulations to go through as well.
Yeah. Obviously, if we can, it's another option, but it's still a connection with nature.
Yeah.
But the undeveloped potential to actually put living walls and green roofs in our cities and towns is vast, because we've always say we've built boundary to boundary, as deep as we can, as wide as we can. Introducing green infrastructure has become less and less, which has been recognised at a national level. Natural England are re-promoting green infrastructure, and local authorities. Virtually every local authority has a green infrastructure on its agenda. So it's a demand, and it's a need, and it is deliverable. By looking around, we've got roofs, we've got walls, we've got opportunities. We can actually create a much greener and healthier space, a much cleaner future for the oncoming generation, using the power of biophilia and biophilic design in our urban infrastructure. It's not hard to do it. The opportunities there, we just got to recognize it.
Yeah, and it's being willing to have those conversations, isn't it? Just to see what's possible.
Yeah.
We speak to so many architects, don't we, on a day-to-day basis, that just don't realise what is possible. They just have assumed these limitations with living walls, not so much green roofs, mostly living walls. But really, there is so much we can do. But in business terms, how does adding greenery or integrating green spaces actually add value?
It will add value to the real estate. It will create a better valued building, because we're actually providing a green infrastructure that is recognized by planners. It will become an asset in terms of it's a space where people can work and live and play, that is in line with biophilic design. It will actually extend the performance of the facades of the building, because the living walls will absorb the UVs. 50% of the solar energy is actually absorbed by a living wall. So we protect the building. It will add an extra layer of insulation, so it keeps the buildings cooler in the summer, warmer in the winter, and it actually makes the building a lot more sustainable. And then by going for a sustainability building, we can actually go to local authorities and actually look at how it affects the rateable value of the building, because it is being built on a sustainable program. Yeah,
it's very true. We've worked on a few projects, haven't we, where we've had to work with the client and the architect to make sure we support them in hitting like a BREEAM excellent rating. Or
absolutely.
And then it's amazing what you can do.
Yeah, and then we're all focused on zero carbon for 2035. Boris has brought the timing down, and we all actually, carbon reduction should be foremost on all our agenda anyway. And 2.3 kg of carbon per square meter can be extracted every year by installing a living wall. So this is adding value to the building. It's an environmental asset that what we're creating. We're creating a community and better space and an environmental asset, which adds value to the real estate by using the power of green infrastructure.
Yeah, and it's not short term, is it? It's for the long term. That's another
absolutely.
thing I feel trips.
Yeah. It's a long term legacy. And I think really we want to encourage architects, designers, ecologists, consultants, planning consultants to actually realize green infrastructure is a long-term, designed properly from the beginning, is a long-term asset that will leave a legacy for the oncoming generation. But
Exactly.
the key thing is design. It's not an add-on to a scheme. It should be designed into the scheme right from the beginning.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we see a bigger picture all the way through.
Yeah, that the design stage is I'll probably say the most important stage, isn't it?
Yeah. Correct
In getting
plant selection,
right.
correct substrate, water management and maintenance are so key to a long-term sustainable solution.
Yeah.
And ANS, what we focus on is longevity. You know, that's our key. You know, whether we're talking about biophilia, whether we're talking about air purification, biodiversity, whatever our driver is for the purpose of green infrastructure, the key point is longevity.
Yeah, there's no point, is there, creating anything that's going to be for the short term when we're looking at something like biodiversity, which is, or air quality, which we want for the long term. There's no point designing something, for the short term. So that is a really important point.
Yeah, and ANS, the team here will help and assist architects to ensure that whatever's designed is for a long-term sustainable advantage.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for that, Steve. We'll wrap up now, but I hope you enjoyed today's session and learned something new. If you would like to chat through a project or have any questions, you can reach us at inquiries@ans.global. That's no .com, just .global. Thanks for joining us and have a good day.
Good, thank you all.